Wait, pause. Hi, Editing Mercy here, and I just want to throw in this nice little disclaimer here that as I'm exporting this and rewatching it over, I'm realizing that I switched the twins' names around. Yeah, my bad. So anywhere throughout this video, if I say Stack, I'm actually referring to Smoke, and if I say Smoke, I'm actually referring to Stack. A lot of this was off the brain, if you can't tell, so it just kind of happened like that. Anyways, enjoy the video. There's not a whole lot left to say about how incredibly good this movie is. I mean, Sinners genuinely is the best movie of the year. I know a lot of people is throwing that around, but like as of right now, May 11th, 2025, 9:52 p.m. at the time that I'm recording this movie is the best movie of the year so far, by far. Up until this point, like I don't know if there's any other movies coming out this year. I don't know if this new Spike Lee movie might end up, you know, taking that title, who knows, but as of right now it is genuinely the best movie of the year. It's such an important movie for film culture, black culture. It has a huge impact. Okay, it has people talking about it. It's a genuine piece of art. It's a masterpiece. It's just so incredible, and I want to thank everyone, the entire crew, Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, the whole crew, everyone who had a hand in fucking making this movie. Thank you for blessing the fucking earth with this shit. This movie is so unique, and it's so well put together, and I genuinely think that it just couldn't have happened with any other director besides Ryan, you know? And with that being said, I want to start this video off by talking about the identity of this film. All right, because the identity of this film is something that I felt very drawn to. It was one of my favorite aspects of this film. And how Ryan writes identity is so interesting to me because this movie comes from a very personal place in his life. A lot of this film was inspired by his uncle and how much he loved blues music.
My Uncle James, I knew for my whole life, and he died while I was in post-production on Creed. That was when he died in 2015. And he meant the world to me. And the only music he would listen to was the blues. That was all. That was what he loved. He had a crush on Beyonce, crazy enough. So he would listen to her songs every once in a while. But that was his, you know, that was his thing. And he would drink Old Taylor whiskey when he was off work, and he'd sit and just listen to blues records on vinyl, and then eventually on CD. And I would spend time with him listening to that music.
All of that stuff, it was heavily informed, and is a great reason why this film is feeling so heartfelt, why it's so rich, right? Why it's so unique is because it's filled with so much emotion and personal intake from Ryan's life. And I feel like that's really beautiful because you can see it shine on screen. Like you can genuinely feel all of the love and all of the effort, all of the passion for this movie on screen. You can feel it through the music, you can feel it through the cinematography, you can feel it through the actors, the dialogue, all of that. It all comes through, nothing's left out. The sense of community and togetherness that Ryan created throughout this film is honestly sort of unparalleled. It's very rooted in a part of history that a lot of people had no clue existed. And I'm talking about like the Mississippi Delta itself and its relations to blues music during a time of, you know, the Jim Crow era and KKK. Also about Asian Americans being present within these communities as well. How much of a mixed bag these communities were so close together. And Ryan really like took his time to also include all of these different, you know, backgrounds in this one film that often doesn't really get shines of light, like doesn't see the light of day. A lot of people had no idea. A lot of different communities, a lot of different backgrounds and races were all together during this time of, you know, of America, including like, you know, Choctaw. I'm sorry I didn't mention them earlier, but yeah, the Choctaw natives, they also part of this community in a way. They weren't present in the film very long, unfortunately, but they were a part of this era, in this time frame of America. It's such a refreshing thing to see in films nowadays, the way that Ryan uses it, because it's so based in history, it's so based in fact. You can tell that he carefully researched this time correctly to be able to present us with an accurate depiction of what time was like back then, in a way, or at least a version of what time looked like back then. Obviously there wasn't vampires running around, but like there's some truth based in the world that he presented us. And compare that to like something of a modern day movie where it's like representation being shown nowadays in movies just kind of feel like a checkbox for DEI, and it's like it's very clear when that's done. This does not feel like that. It feels like, yes, we're here and there's a complete reason that we're here, and we have our own mission, we have our own importance and impact to the story, and we're not just here just to, you know, to check off a box. And I love that. Each doing their part to bring up the community. When researching this video, after watching countless of all the interviews, there was a word that Ryan would use a lot to describe this film, or like what inspired him to really describe this film and the inspiration behind the twins and all that kind of stuff. And that word is
The dichotomy.
Dichotomy. And that word is essentially is a synonym for duality. And I wanted to touch on how Ryan uses the vampires to symbolize the dichotomy of a lot of his characters, right? In the faces of evil, because I feel the duality of these characters, like some of them change and other ones don't, but the ones that do change, I feel change in a slightly different way, right? We've all been put in situations. Well, I can't say we all have been put in situations, but when humans are put in a situation of life or death, obviously that's when a person's true colors show, right? And when Remick pulls up to the juke joint, and it's very clear that they are all vampires. You know, we get the cornbread scene, which is so funny. When all of that kind of goes on, these characters shift, and we get to see how they deal with the life or death situation. And I feel like Ryan, obviously the vampires are a symbol for temptation in this movie, and all of these characters react in very similar ways, most notably Grace. Now Grace is a very touchy topic, not touchy, but controversial, because a lot of people are on Grace's side for what she did, and a lot of people are against Grace's side for what she did. Me personally, I understand what she did, but it's definitely the most selfish move you can make. I'm not gonna hold you. It is the most selfish thing ever that a person could do in that kind of situation, but I understand it. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I wouldn't say I'd protect her, but it's like, damn, bro, like you really fucked us all over. All right, we didn't really get to spend a lot of time with Grace early parts of the film. Like when we were introduced to her, her daughter was going across the street to grab her. We know that she's a businesswoman and she has what it takes. She's very down to business, but we didn't get to really spend too much time with her, so I can't really talk on like how her duality changes and that kind of thing, but we know she's very much family oriented. At the slightest mention of Remick going to town to kill her daughter, she immediately flipped sides and just completely became selfish. Like we know in the heat of a battle, or in the heat of her life or death, when her flight or flight senses hit, she is going to protect herself and her family. Respectable, I understand. Very interesting. A lot of people would do the same. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Now I want to get on to a different character, Stack, who I feel is also kind of similar to Grace. Now this may be a hot take, but I feel as if the situation were flipped and it was Smoke who was not in the juke joint that night, and say he was off somewhere in town, maybe even with Mary. I feel as though Stack would have made a similar choice that Grace did, where he may have actually invited the vampires into the juke joint to protect Smoke, or just to save himself from the thought of protecting Smoke. And I'm only saying that because I think that Stack, he's a very interesting character, and here's his duality when he was faced with evil. Stack was very deluded in the face of evil. He was very deluded, right? We see how he acts when Smoke died in front of him and turned into a vampire. He genuinely was just like, that's my brother, he's alive, blah blah blah. We saw the shock and delusion on his face, which is a very normal response. I'm not holding that like against him or anything, but even after that moment when Cornbread and the other people, they were trying to come inside and he was like being a little naive, he even almost handed Cornbread his money. You know, he was going for it, he was tempted by it, and he genuinely wasn't clear-headed enough to make that kind of decision. He was very confused on what the hell was going on. He just kind of, and this is Stack we're talking about. This is Stack, the calm, level-headed man with the plan, like the down-to-earth twin, the other twin, the most serious one of the two. And he is very much a little deluded in this kind of situation. I feel if Annie were not there, these situations would have went a lot differently. 100%. Stack would have made a lot of different decisions. Annie was the one that informed a lot. She was definitely so much of team leader that night. We'll get to Annie in a second, but I want to talk more on Stack. Him being deluded and all of that, I feel still would have made him choose that same similar fate that Grace did. And let's say Smoke is out of the juke joint and he's gone, knowing that, and Remick makes a remark that says, hey, I know where your brother is, I can send my goons over there and we can take him out real quick. Stack, hearing that, is gonna be like, ooh, no, I can't let them get to my brother. But at the same time, Stack knows his brother. He knows that he can take care of himself, maybe, but he also can't watch his back. He knows that that's why Stack is there. He said it so many times that I have to watch your back and I have to protect you, kind of thing. Smoke can protect himself. He is a little gung-ho. He's definitely that kind of person to shoot first, ask question later. But like, if there's a whole bunch of horde of vampires coming after him, I don't think Stack would accept that Smoke could do all that by himself. I'm not saying that he doesn't trust him. I'm pretty sure he trusts him, but it's like he would still worry heavy. And I think that Stack, in order to keep all those vampires from going over to Smoke, he would make that same decision that Grace did and actually call them in. If not call them in, but devise a plan to keep them there, which eventually would still end up, I feel like, bringing them inside somehow, some way. But I think he is almost on the same level of selfishness for Grace as to, you know, protect his brother, protect his loved ones type shit. Now, the other half of Stack that I want to talk about is Annie. Annie's a great character. Besides Sammy, she's like, next to Sammy, she's my other favorite character of this film, because in the face of evil, like, Annie was strong. Her duality, like earlier when we met her in the movie, she was very much worried about Stack, but yet she was so careful, and she still understood and loved and cared for this man that she hasn't seen for so long. Like, when we were introduced to her, she was like, oh man, that loving partner that just never let you go, that never stopped thinking about you. They have a very solid foundation with their love. But Annie, she was like that when we first met her, and in the face of evil, I can't get over this. She was so confident and clear-headed, and just, she knew what was going on because she had prepared for these types of things her entire life. Like, yes, she was worried about certain things, but she knew what to do. She was running things because she knew how to deal with this problem, and she was so clear-headed in making all of these decisions. And that's like kind of her duality, where she can be confident and lead, but yet be so caring and loving behind the scenes with Stack. And that's kind of why I love her. She was in there really just keeping Stack's mind in the right place, trying to keep everyone's brain in the right place and from, you know, spiraling out of control like Grace. Now, Mary is a character that I genuinely would love to talk about because she is one that's very interesting to me, right? She's very interesting to me because she expressed and she showed so much emotion throughout the film. She's definitely a character that wears her heart on her sleeve, like, throughout most of the film. Like, you can kind of see she doesn't shy away from showing emotion, and she's definitely not afraid of confronting those feelings, especially towards Stack. And like, she's very raw. Let's put it that way. She's very raw, and I think the reason why I struggle with trying to figure out like her duality and how Ryan wrote her is because in the face of evil, in the face of temptation, she got even more emotional. She got even more vulnerable. Like, it's like she didn't have too much duality at all. Unlike Stack and Annie or, like, you know, Grace, she just stayed Mary. She doubled down on all of her feelings. Like, when Remick in the group, she went out there to talk to them, Remick was asking her, telling her about her mother. You don't have to share the same fate type thing, offering her immortality and stuff like that. And she got even more vulnerable. She was starting to, like, you know, open up about all that and her feelings about it, until she started to realize something was a little different. Something was a little funny. But still, she started opening up to the wrong people. But it's like her emotions still kind of kept flowing. and it's very interesting to see. I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting her character in some kind of ways. You guys comment down below, how do you feel about Mary and her character? But it's like she's such a very interesting and vulnerable character. She doesn't really have too much duality, not from what I saw, from what I remembered from watching the film. Not to say that that's a bad thing at all. She's still a very complex and great character all the way around. She's just very raw in the way that she shows her emotion, and she just doubles down. She's a very complex character and kind of made me realize a lot about love back in the 1930s, that they genuinely just loved for the pure emotion. Your man disappeared for 3 years and you come back and she still feels the same way, you know. They still feel the same way about that kind of love would not survive in the modern day, I guarantee it. All of this to say that Ryan Coogler has a very, very interesting way and intentional way of writing these characters with a certain opposites duality kind of way. And I understand why he's kind of obsessed with dichotomy of storytelling and writing it, because it brings out the worst, the best, and so many interesting emotions out of your characters. And that's something that I can't get enough of. I'm not gonna lie. I genuinely just can't get enough of that. I feel like the title of this film being Sinners just speaks to the overall theme, or one of the themes, because this movie just means a lot and has a bunch of different identities. Just speaks to the theme of the duality of temptation and contentment. Every single one of these characters throughout the main cast has been faced with a choice, left and right, and it's honestly, they've all met different fates, and they all show a level of frailty that just kind of informs the decisions later on in the story. But I find it so relatable in a supernatural story. Yeah, I find it kind of relatable. They genuinely feel like real people, and Ryan does such a good job in writing real characters in this film. The main character, Sammy, was literally in the face of the devil, and after the dust settled and everything was cleared the next day, he went back to the church and still did not choose God. He chose himself in that moment. And that's such a very interesting thing for a character like that, who just been through everything. You would expect him to run and put his whole entire faith and his whole life into God's word, but instead he chooses to live his life the way that he wants to, the way that makes him happy, the way that fulfills him. And that's such a, a powerful message into that as well. And same could be said for Smoke and Mary. They chose everlasting love at the cost of never seeing the sun again, losing his brother, and it's so much at stake, so much loss in this film. And so Stack, he chose the death to be reunited with his loved one, his family. And it's such a powerful theme. Probably one of my favorite, to be honest, because it puts people in extraordinary decision-making situations that really makes and breaks and could define them as characters, that genuinely just shows us as the audience who these characters truly are. This movie, Sinners, has a lot of different identities. It's a musical. It's a Southern historical movie. It's a movie about love. It's a movie about trust. It's a movie about vampire. There's so much. There's so much here, and it's filled with a lot of things and a lot of deep layered meanings that is so well fleshed out, and it makes you question things, which is why you feel the need to rewatch it so many times because there's just so much more in that film that just wasn't blatantly told to you. And I respect that, and I love that in a director, when they know what to show you and what to tell you. And there's a huge impact on that's left on people.